I don't know about you, but I hate drawing backgrounds. They're so not fun. So my objective with this video is to make backgrounds fun. Before we get started even putting pencil to paper, we should think about what our background is. Think about how it relates to your character. What is the time and place of the background? How do they keep their room? If it's an interior, are they messy? Are they a clean person? What kind of personality does this character have? If it's an exterior, what time of day is it? Is it in a forest? Is it in a wide open field? So think about what world you're trying to create before you even get started drawing. Next, I would recommend looking up some reference images. One really great resource for this is Pinterest. I love looking at Pinterest. There's tons of great art on there, but find a collection of images and colors that really inspire you and save them to a folder. When you have a bunch of reference images that you really like, I like using PureRef. PureRef is a free program that you can download for your computer. It's free, but I really recommend supporting the developers as it's a really useful program. So with PureRef, you can just drop in your images and arrange them in a nice, pleasing way so that you can look at all of your reference images while you're painting and drawing. Now that we've done all of our prep work, we can start working on drawing our backgrounds. So the first step I would recommend doing is drawing thumbnails of what you want your background to be. A thumbnail, like the name suggests, is a really tiny drawing about the size of your thumbnail. You don't have to take it literally. It's just a tiny drawing that only takes a few seconds to draw. So here I'm coming up with a bunch of different ideas for just an exterior drawing, just as an example. And if you'd like to download this template, it's available in the video description down below for free, as well as the completed background that we finished. But the example we're gonna do is an interior. So here I'm coming up with a background for a character who is a bit of a nerd, keeps kind of a messy room, and is not at all based on me whatsoever. And I just come up with a few different ideas here, kind of exploring different camera angles, different views, different ways to arrange things. Things I try to keep in mind for a background is the composition of it. So leading the audience's eye and sort of lead angles around so that the audience's attention stays where I want it to be, which is typically in the center of the background or wherever the character might be. After I come up with a thumbnail that I'm pretty happy with, I make a new file, and in this case, I want to do this fisheye perspective one. So I need to make my file actually pretty large so I can draw the perspective grid around where the background is going to be. For this background, I wanted to do something different, so I tried doing a fisheye perspective. This is where every line that exists in perspective goes along a curve instead of straight lines. It just looks a bit more interesting, and I wanted to try it out for this background. So I draw out my fisheye perspective on top of my rough thumbnail that I have imported here, and then I go over the top of the thumbnail and do my rough drawing, where I kind of clean up my really rough painting from my thumbnail and kind of tie down how I want my background to actually look like, just using my thumbnail as a reference. And then once I'm done with that, I do a new layer on top to do tie downs. It's kind of where I take my rough sketch and then just tie it down one step further. I find this to be helpful before doing the final ink layer because it helps me get a really clean drawing to do the inking on top of. You can skip this step if you want to, but I find it personally helpful. So here I'm going through and doing my final line work. Pretty straightforward, especially since we did the tie-down drawing earlier. I'm just going through with a small brush without pressure sensitivity just to get a really simple line kind of look to it. And then after that, so here, to get ready for laying in color, I'm coloring every single thing in sort of a purplish color and just making each object on its own layer. This will make coloring a lot easier as I go forward. One of the first things I like to do before I start laying in color is I like to lay in values. That is, what is lightest and what is darkest in my background. And if I can get that to read really well, then I know my colors are going to read once I lay my colors on top of that. Then I make a new layer, set it to multiply, and pick desaturated purple, and then I fill in where all my shadows are going to go. So I use airbrushes, hard brushes, and different brushes that I have to create these shadows. And also the selection lasso tool helps a lot for just isolating specific parts that I want to add shadows to. And after I'm done with shadows, then I do the same thing for highlights. I make a new layer, set it to screen, and then paint with a lighter color. In this case, we're using white and different kinds of brushes to add highlights to all of my objects. Another thing I like to do for backgrounds is play around with texture. This is a really simple example, but I have this watercolor texture that I made on a piece of paper that I scanned in, and then I just overlay it on top of my artwork and then just set it to either multiply or overlay or a different blending mode. So at this point, the background's looking pretty good, and you could probably call it good at this point, but instead of a monochromatic color scheme of all purple, I wanted to go a little bit more complex and do actual colors. So I'm going to go through and color all of my objects using their individual colors. And that's pretty easy because I've already separated them out into their own layers. So all I need to do is select the layer and then do a hue saturation adjustment. The hotkey for this is Control U. I use this all the time. When I was making this, I was kind of talking about how you just need to know what colors feel good together. Color theory is obviously very important to know. Once you go from the biggest colors down to the smallest colors, that's typically how I would recommend working. So once you get the walls and the floor in a color that you like, then you can adjust the colors of the other objects in the room. Using the Control U hotkey makes it really easy to just pick and try colors and see what looks good together and experiment. And then speaking of things that make backgrounds fun, one of my favorite things to do is come up with fake products, fake posters, things like that. That's one of the things that I find joy in. So I had a lot of fun making these posters. I had trouble deciding on what I wanted the posters to be, and I ended up settling on some of my favorite Sega Genesis games. So I did parodies of all my favorite Sega Genesis games like Gunstar Heroes and Mega Man, and also an anime poster. So again, not based on me whatsoever, but this was a lot of fun. So if you can find things about making backgrounds that you find fun, maybe focus on that. For me, it's fake products and fake advertisements. For you, maybe you like certain styles of furniture or different kinds of plants. What kind of things do you like to draw? Incorporate those into your backgrounds. And then one last polishing thing I'd really recommend doing is color balancing your art after you're done with it. This just kind of helps tie all the colors together. And I recommend this not just for backgrounds, but for any piece of art that you do. So to get to the color balance window, we want to set it as a new layer on top of all the art that we've already created. In Clip Studio Paint, select Layer, New Correction Layer, and then select Color Balance. So honestly, with this window, I just kind of fiddle with it to get it to work. This is what I do. So you've got shadows, midtones, and highlights, right? And each one has their own RGB sliders on the top. So the way I'll kind of do it is I'll go one by one, starting either with shadows or with highlights, and I'll drag each bar left and right to see, is that an improvement? Does that make it look worse? Is it not helping either direction? And I don't go very far. I only go like a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. And I'm like, does it need more blue? Does it need more magenta? And then I set those where I think they look good. Then I move on to the next one, which would be halftone. And then I set that, does more yellow look good? More blue? More magenta, more green. And I keep going on, just trying the sliders back and forth a little bit. And at the end of that, that just kind of ties everything together and makes everything look a bit more harmonious than it did before. It's a really good step that I'd recommend doing at the end of your artwork. And then last but not least, we have to get my man Dan Backslide in here on this body pillow. Dan Backslide being on a body pillow like this actually comes from me streaming on Twitch. My good friend Mushroom Adam made a bunch of docus of just different men on body pillows, and I really like them a lot, and Dan Backslide is arguably my most handsome one. So I thought I'd incorporate that in here as a little shout out to all the friends I've made on Twitch over the years. So there's our final finished background. Again, if you'd like to download this background, it's available in the video description down below, as well as the template file for creating thumbnails for backgrounds. I had a lot of fun with this, but to be honest, I still don't really like backgrounds. I don't know if my attitude has changed on them. I think if I did them a lot more, I would learn to enjoy them more. It's just like anything, right? It's like playing a musical instrument. If you don't do it a lot and you don't practice it, you're not going to be very good at it, and it's not going to be very fun. I think that backgrounds are the same way. If we want to get better at backgrounds, we need to do them more. We need to figure out how to make them fun. So next time you draw a character, do a little challenge for yourself. Put them in an environment of some sort. And also a huge shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You guys help me do what I love to do, which is help other people. If you'd like to support me and my work, head on over to patreon.com/JesseJJones. I'd like to especially give a shout out to my big booty supporters over on Patreon. Thank you, Alina Maximenko, Death Metal, Enrico, Randy Hack, Sean B. Simmons, Taylor B., and Terrell. Thank you guys so much. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. If you'd like to learn more about drawing, check out this video on my drawing journey and how I learned how to draw. Look forward to seeing you on the next video. And until next time, bye-bye!